There is dialogue from the time, particularly Plato, which talks about whether or not Achilles was the dominant or the submissive person in the relationship. And
I mean, we kind of know what Madeline Miller thinks. She doesn't exactly come out, but Patroclus,
we know what Madeline Miller
thinks. Such
a
sad boy. He's just like, oh, I stood in the corner and like watched him shine. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Bottom vibes.
And Achilles is clearly the dominant person in the relationship in this book.
Right.
What's interesting is the way that the conversation happens from a classics perspective is
one more thing,
sort
if
of
I
just...
can interrupt. One more thought. And
Please.
It's interesting how in the modern world, I feel compelled to add, and just because Patroclus is like the sad boy, kind of like eclipsed, less dominant one in the relationship, that doesn't mean he's not the top. But I imagine for the ancient Greeks, it would mean he wasn't the top, because this was this whole like masculine relationship partnership that all of the subtext lived on top of.
Even modern, right? We all know
people still go there, but like we understand that like you can't make assumptions.
Like we still have this modern day preconceived notion that like,
yes, you're
big,
so
strong
right. You're so right.
Equals top, small and artsy equals bottom. Like
you're so
this
right.
is the world that we've lived in for apparently thousands of years.
And we inherited it from these people, which is so crazy and cool. That's why we're into classics.
Well, we inherited it from the heterosexuals. It's their fault.
That's true too.
Straight people did this to us. I mean, how many times in Will and Grace back in the day was the conversation about like, oh, who's the woman? Like, who's the woman in the relationship? Fun fact, neither of us are the women. That's kind of the fucking point. Like,
anyway, back to Homer.
Well, so
you were saying
in that time when we're, the Patroclus and Achilles relationship, even then the conversation was Achilles is clearly the more dominant person in this relationship and therefore is the dominant person in their sexual relationship. But because there was no real established and accepted idea of like homosexual love, all of the like same-sex relationships were done in the idea of like mentor-mentee. Right? Like they would have what they referred to as pederasty, which we would refer to as pedophiles.
Yes.
Which is an older man takes on like a younger boy as a mentee, and they would have their version of sex, which is rubbing your dick between the thighs. Like it wasn't penetrative. But it was part of
I thought they were actual pedos.
Well, they are. But
I mean, okay, to be fair, you're quite right. But
also, who's to say what they were actually doing, right? Like, were they having penetrative sex? Probably. We don't know. We weren't there. And I would assume that the British Museum in the 80s, who was putting all this information together, didn't want to be like, and then they were putting it up the butt. Like, they were probably not going to go that far.
We can put this pottery over there.
Yeah, they looked at the Greek pottery and they were like, well, clearly it must just be between his thighs because who would put it in his ass? Like
exactly.
There's the frame of reference that we have for this information is done through like this historical context that we don't have a good understanding about what actually happened because we weren't there 3,000 years ago. But so on one hand, you have the camp of people who are like, Achilles is clearly the top because he's big, strong, jock boy. But the other people are saying that isn't how this works. And this is, again, the writing of the time back in like Plato, Aristotle days. They were like, that's not how this works because technically, canonically, Patroclus is older. So their whole thought process of who is going to be the dominant one in the relationship had nothing to do with personality type or the size of your biceps. It had everything to do with age, plain and simple.